Oh no, we spilled that idea. It was about the differences in the original, comic, Clone Wars story timelines and that of the newer The Clone Wars series. We think we could find a branching point between these two timelines. Let us explain in more detail. Long before Disney declared all previously told Star Wars stories legends, the new computer-animated TV series The Clone Wars was already rewriting a more or less fully established part of expanded universe timeline, the Clone Wars period. Originally these for years had been filled with comics, the animated Clone Wars series, books etc. And Star Wars, The Clone Wars first simply added to this, before the developers decided to start overwriting the existing material. Thus, both timelines are officially part of the Legends timeline now. Only of course, they contradict each other in many places, such as when Anakin became a Jedi Knight, who fought in which battles, who died when, and what happened to villains like Asajj Ventress. Since both stories are fantastic and should be remembered, could there be a point where the two stories or timelines diverged and that thus makes both of them equally valid? Ideally it would boil down to a single action or decision that would cause a massive chain reaction in the timeline. Now, this idea was not finished, but let's see what we got. Be warned, not every detail of this has been thought through, only the general idea. So, here is the idea. The point where the two Clone Wars timelines diverge actually comes significantly before the Clone Wars themselves. Sometime before the Phantom Menace in fact. It was in those days that Palpatine was still figuring out ways to defeat the Jedi and bring about the revenge of the Sith. To that end, he had some dealings with Mother Talzin from Dathomir, the head of the Night Sisters. In one timeline, Sidious and Talzin do end up working together, while in the other that never occurs. In the timeline, where Palpatine and Talzin had, briefly, been allied, Darth Sidious later returned to Dathomir when it became time for him to choose an apprentice. In that timeline, Talzin offers her own son, the being later known as Maul, and gave him to Palpatine to form into a Sith. In the other timeline however, Palpatine never deals with Talzin again, and finds a different Zabrak, that he turns into Maul, as it is told in the Now Legends material. In this timeline though, Palpatine had to spend more time training this universe's Maul, since he wasn't preconditioned to the darker aspects of the Force. In the other timeline, he learned these things intuitively from the closeness to the Night Sisters. Because Palpatine had more time in the timeline, where he had worked with Talzin, he had a better plan ready for the beginning of the Clone Wars, forcing the Jedi into acting more quickly and irrationally. This led to the promotion of Anakin Skywalker and several battles early in the war playing out way differently. In the timeline, where Palpatine and Talzin had never been allied, Maul is killed on Naboo and never returns. Because there are no other dark powers around, Palpatine allows Dooku to train Asajj Ventress and later Quinlan Vos in the dark side. To get her with the slower start to the war itself, this setup leads to the Clone Wars comics, books and series from the early 2000s. The other variant is the one we know from the newer computer-animated series. In this timeline, Maul, being the son of a Night Sister, has enough strength to keep himself alive after the Battle of Naboo. After Maul's defeat, Mother Talzin spends years pondering how to take revenge on Palpatine and get her son back. She finally gets the chance, when Asajj Ventress is cast away by Dooku and calls her through the Force. Manipulating the situation, Talzin causes the creation of Savage Opress and eventually Maul's return. Maul then greatly influences all following events on a large scale. So, what do you think? Would that work? Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. Okay, time to clean this up. Goodbye and until next time.